Mr. Speaker, I move the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 8266, the FEMA Assistance Relief Act of 2020 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 8266, a bill to modify the federal cost share of certain emergency assistance provided under the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, to modify the activities eligible for assistance under the emergency declaration issued by the President on March 13, 2020, relating to COVID-19 and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, and the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser, each will control 20 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 8266, the FEMA Assistance Relief Act as amended. H.R. 8266 is a bipartisan bill I introduced with Subcommittee Chair Titus, Representatives Thompson, Lowy, Roybal, Allard, Walden, and several other members representing districts ravaged by natural disasters this year. Simply put, this legislation would increase the federal cost share of certain assistance provided by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, under the Stafford Act. Specifically, the bill would adjust the federal cost share for all declared disasters in the year 2020, the year of the pandemic, the year of record wildfires, the year of record floods, the year of more hurricanes than any other time in history, from 75% to not less than 90%, and further adjust the federal cost share for COVID-related declarations to 100%. Communities across this country, including my district in Oregon, continue to struggle to recover from the twin crises, combating COVID-19 pandemic while also facing extreme weather events, fires, and other issues that science has linked to climate change. State, local, tribal, and territorial governments are seeing their public health, emergency management resources stretched thin or outright depleted and overdrawn. It's Congress' responsibility to ensure they have the financial support necessary to address these crises. I first implored President Trump to direct FEMA to authorize a federal cost share adjustment back in March, when he invoked a rarely used clause in the Stafford Act to declare the pandemic a national emergency and issue a presidential emergency declaration for each state and many protectorates and federally recognized tribes. Thus far, both the President and the agency have not taken action to shift the cost share more equitably onto the shoulders of the federal government, who invoked this clause in an unprecedented way. While federal regulations allow for presidential or administrative cost share adjustment, the requests from the National Governors Association, the Conference of State Legislatures, National Association of Counties, National Emergency Management Association, International Association of Emergency Managers, and others for this much-needed assistance have gone unanswered at a time when states and locals have seen their revenues all but disappear due to the impact on public health measures taken to combat the pandemic. On several occasions during the last 15 years, Congress has seen fit to statutorily increase the federal cost share of FEMA assistance, notably after a couple of hurricanes. This year has already seen the busiest tornado, hurricane, wildfire season on record. The burdens of response and recovery to an unprecedented number of natural disasters are compounding atop a global pandemic. If ever there was a moment for another statutory adjustment, 2020 is the year in which that should happen. Further, by establishing a national emergency and pulling FEMA into the response in mid-March, the President invoked Section 501B of the Stafford Act, which declares the United States exercises exclusive or preeminent responsibility and authority. One would think that exclusive and or preeminent responsibility and authority would justify the 100% cost share for COVID-related expenses. H.R. 8266 would provide much-needed assistance to ease the financial burden on state, local, tribal, territorial communities that have been granted Stafford declarations this year. Additionally, this bill clarifies and encourages FEMA to reimburse for personal protective equipment, Disinfection costs for public schools, public transit, courthouses, and other traditionally eligible non-medical entities were excluded from eligibility in FEMA's September 1st interim policy for some unknown reason on eligible public assistance expenses tied to fighting the spread of the global pandemic. I'd like to thank, in particular, Congressman Payne and Malinowski, members of the committee, for their efforts to address this with a standalone bill. I'm glad we're able to address the matter here. I just to reflect for a moment on the wildfires in the West. These were wildfires of a magnitude and intensity never seen in recorded history, and according to some scientists who have been studying our forests through history, prehistory. In my district, we had 3 major conflagrations. One just upriver from my house, which took out the entire town of Blue River and torched the McKenzie River corridor. The winds were gusting to hurricane force. Humidity dropped to 6%. That's the Sahara Desert. That's not Oregon. And they blew down the McKenzie River corridor. Forest scientists say there has never been what's called a stand replacement fire event in that corridor in history or prehistory. It's wet, it's damp, but not this year. And these conditions were unbelievable. North, on the north part of my district and in Kurt Schrader's district, we lost 3 towns. And had massive damage. And then down in southern Oregon, not in a forested area, in Representative Walden's district, the towns of Phoenix and Talent were dramatically impacted. Many residences and businesses were lost. One of the fires was set by a transient in a field, but again, the winds were blowing at a level never ever seen before out of the Northeast. The city manager of Talent said to me, I grew up in Southern California. This looks to me like the worst that Southern California ever had in the past. This doesn't look like Oregon. These things are due to the changing climate. There's going to be more of them, and we got to be ready. And this bill at least will help with this year's response. With that, I reserve the balance of my